Hello everyone, welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. In this one, we're going to be taking a look at, I guess, a new take on Katsu the Wanderer. Sadly, the bans didn't help because people still think that Zen is the best deck. I mean, it definitely slowed him down, but I mean, to be honest, I don't know, man. Because they kind of just murdered Katsu, not being able to play other bonds. You can't really play the full aggressive Katsu list anymore. You're kind of stuck on the Mask of Momentum now, which, of course, you may know from my previous Katsu videos. I never switched off. I thought Mask was always really strong, and I kept playing it. So, of course, I'm still on Mask of Momentum, as I always was, but you know, the deck not having as many Bonds of Ancestry really makes you build differently because you can't have as many strong turns anymore. Before, I used to play yellows in Katsu, and it always just let those dishonor turns or those wider turns just be so much better, and you don't have them anymore, which really sucks. And they did say that in Rosetta, Katsu would be getting a new card. I assume it's just going to be Bonds of Ancestry in a different name as a Katsu spec. So he's the only one who can play it. That would make the most sense to me, I think. Or we could see a new Gust Wave. I think that would be pretty nice too. But without knowing what we are getting in Rosetta, and of course we need a Katsu deck for now, this is the Katsu list that I've actually been finding a lot of fun. So, if you guys want to actually play Katsu this format, I think this one can definitely be one to check out. So, with all that, let's get started. Starting with the equipment, because Katsu's pretty old, I'm not going to read the hero. Mask of Momentum is really good. You can't really play Pouncing Links anymore because you don't have bonds to tutor for. You got to play this one. This one makes the most sense with Katsu. Katsu is a deck about forcing on hit effects, so Mask of Momentum can give you some bonus card advantage. We have Heart and Crosstrap in our main board because you'll see why later. We do have a lot of 2-cost attacks in our deck, and also in most situations, in any game that ends pretty fast, you'll want this so you can just play a free Surging Strike at some point. Breaking Scales, because this is just the best dang glove Ninja can play. Obviously, if you're Zen, or I guess the best glove Katsu can play. Zen would rather have Shuko, and Fi doesn't play much combo, but this card's actually insane. It threatens a +1 on pretty much on literally every combo card, so your opponent either has to overblock or just live with the fact that you're going to be able to get a on-hit off at any point during the game. And then Breeze Rider Boots, because we are, of course, still on our Mugenshi releases for some of our matchups, so Breeze Rider Boots can just give us that potential to have a really good go-wide turn if we can get a Mugenshi off. And then, of course, Double Harmonized Kodachi, because there's literally no weapon Katsu. I guess he can play Tiger Taming Kakura, but this is not a Tiger-based list, so there's no point in playing that. Taking a look at our sideboarded equipment, we have 4 other equipment. Arcane Lantern for your wizard matchups, because if you're swinging Double Kodachi into Kano, you're probably losing. Tide Flippers for most of our other arcane matchups, because you're not bringing in Mugenshi a lot of time into Rune Blades, or if you are bringing it into Rune Blades, they're blocking something else that turn, so you don't really need the full use off the Breeze Riders, and you can even activate the Tide Flippers on the Lord of Winds anyway. Tunic for our later matchups, because having a resource every few turns is probably better than cross-strapping games that go like 6 or more turns. Or a lot of matchups, if you're going first, I would also consider Tunic, because you'll get this 2 resource in 5 turns. technically, because if you don't count turn 0, which you go first, so technically it is. Yeah, it's still turn 6, but you're getting it like it would be on turn 5 because you go first. So Tunic's pretty good going first. And then Vambrace, because Illusionist is very difficult. Me being this low in the deck list might tell you something about some of the cards you can see in the background. But we kind of need this. Bring this in versus Illusionist, because having this to threaten a on-hit every turn instead of once with these are really good. Because you can think of this as a +1 if they're preventing, just like the breaking scales. Pretty good. So now let's talk about the main board. Our main board is 47 cards, which means we're going to have to bring in a lot of cards, but we'll discuss that all when we go to the rest of the sideboard. Starting with the just baseline, what we're playing, as always, 6 Surging Strikes, 3 red, 3 yellow, because we need Surging Strikes for our deck to work. 7 Whelmings. I like 7 in my Katsu list because, 1 yellow isn't too bad. The yellow can come in for 3, and we can threaten a 4 with the breaking scales, making it harder to block. As well as it can come in for 4 off our Art of War turns or off our Ancestral, so it is just pretty good to have the 1 yellow. Of course, the blues for Kodachis and the reds because they're the strongest. 3 red Be Like Water because it's just like extra Surging Strikes. Of course, they need to hit, but your opponent is either showing you that they have a hand they don't want to block with and you're going to make them block later, or it's just a 0 for 3. Or you can pump it over with like Ancestral. 3 red Descendants and 1 yellow Descendant. This is still a chain starter you can use for Bonds of Ancestry, so having the 1 extra yellow is pretty useful, as well as we have a lot of 2-cost cards in this deck, so the yellow can pay for some of those, and then you're of course playing the red because it's still good. The 3 red bonds that we're actually allowed to play because it can get us Gust Waves if we can set up for it, or it can just always get us. Our main targets are going to be either Dishonor, 100 Winds, or Spinning Wheel Kick in most situations. 400 Winds, 3 red and 1 blue. The 1 blue is in here just so we can have an extra blue in the deck, as well as if it's ever in our yard, we can banish it to bonds to get a red. And then 3 Spinning Wheel Kick, because it's a 1 for 4, it's good. Moving to the blue attacks, Dishonor. It's Dishonor, it's going to be in Katsu. Totally end of time, it's a 0-cost block 3. If you can get it off, it kind of wins you the game automatically. Lord of Wind, because it's very good with Mugenshi. We're on Mugenshi for matchups that are going to try to fatigue us, since Katsu can run out of cards pretty fast. Even if you're doing like double Kodachi every turn, you can still run out of cards. And then 2 Lord of Winds, because it's a 0-cost block 3 in blue, and we have 400 Winds in our deck. Looking at the cards that aren't attacks, Ancestral Empowerment is a pretty good card because it replaces itself and lets us get our on-hit effects. It's also 0-cost and block 3, which means it's pretty good for Katsu. Only 2 Art of War. Art of War is a card that's like not even that good. Honestly, this card actually could get banned and Katsu wouldn't care. I don't think they're going to ban this card, even though a lot of people wanted it to get banned. But like, this is honestly a card Katsu could play without. It is still pretty good in Katsu because you do get those really wide turns, but it just like doesn't feel good a lot of the time. So only 2 Art of War. It also costs 1, so you can't like pitch it to Kodachi. So it's really awkward. Good with Tunic though. Very good with Tunic. 3 Warmongers, because decks that Warmongers is good against are really good matchups in Katsu, so this is just a really good card. It's also a blue block 3 that costs 0, which means it's good with Katsu. He really, really likes those. The last card in the main board might look a little weird, and it is a 1 of Lunging Press. Now, there are 2 reactions that you will always see to this Lunging Press, and I will explain both of them. The first one, why are you playing a Lunging Press? Isn't Concealed Blade strictly better? The answer to that is no. Concealed Blade might block for 1 more, but Concealed Blade cannot target generic attacks. And that is the main reason why Concealed Blade is not in the deck. Because we are playing a lot of attacks that are not generic in our sideboard that we are bringing in every game, and we want the lunging press for them. The second thing they'll do is they'll see lunging press and they'll laugh at you, and then when you play against them and you throw a CNC at them and you have 1 card in your arsenal, and they're going to suspect it's lunging press every time, and they're going to lose because they're going to overblock, and you're just going to save your lunging press for the next one. And then little do they know it's on the bottom of your deck, because that's always happens with me in one-ofs. I don't draw them until the end of the game. But lunging press is actually a tool that matters. It has to be a lunging press. If they make another blue card that has 0 cost and can give a generic attacks +1 in reaction phase, sure. But Concealed Blade doesn't do that. It can't target CNC or the weakest link or most of the other cards we're playing. Other than that, though, it's a +1. It can get our hit effects through. We can use it even on Whelmings or Be Like Waters. It's also a 1-of, so you probably don't want to block with it, so its 2 block doesn't really matter. But I would really... This card is very good. In this list specifically. If you're playing most other Katsus, please don't play this card. Specifically, this Katsu list. You really, really like lunging press. Now, let's talk about the sideboard. Because this is where it gets a little weird. Because we are not only playing Command and Conquer as a 2 for 6, but we are also playing the weakest link as a 2 for 6. But we are also playing Enlightened Strike as technically a 2-card 7, because the Enlightened Strike and the card we're putting on the bottom. But we're also playing Blanche, a 3 for 7. This is the main idea of this Katsu list. We have turns where we can go wide and do the normal Katsu thing, but there are also turns that we can just block and play a CNC, or play a weakest link, or play a Blanche, and be perfectly fine with it, and just be happy with throwing a 3 for 7 or a 2 for 6. A lot of these have hit effects. The lunging press is very, very good with these cards, especially Command and Conquer. Especially the weakest link. Because a lot of the decks you're bringing weakest link into aren't going to be able to block this at instant speed. Well, technically they can, but if they spend a card to play a ward aura, well, you got the card out of their hand anyway. That's fine. So, CNC, the weakest link, very strong. If you don't have Command and Conquers, as always, I say it in every video, unless it's specifically you need CNCs. Like if you're playing like Azuri, I'd say you need it. But you can replace it with Humble. You can replace this with Erase Face. I guess Wreck Havoc. CNC is, of course, always the best option. If you have the choice to play CNCs, I would play CNCs. But, of course, there are replacements. The weakest link would be a replacement, but it's already in the deck. Battlefront Bastion is also a replacement from same set that Blanche comes from. Part the Misfail. 3 Blanche. Blanche is just 3 for 7. This is in here over Battlefront Bastion, mainly because I value the on-hit a lot. Into a deck such as Zen, this can stop them from transcending. Into a deck like New, which this deck is sort of built off of the idea that the meta has shifted a lot towards how can we beat Zen. Well, guess what? All the decks that beat Zen are really good into Katsu, so Katsu has to change. All of these just 2-card big attacks are pretty good into the decks that beat Zen. Into New, it makes it harder for them to transcend. Their cards also lose color, so they can't like hiss you, or they can't, I guess they can still play it, but they can't get the go again, or they can't get the extra +1 from a Venomous Bite. And then also 3/7s are just annoying to block if you want to block at all. So Blanche is actually a really, really good card for a lot of matchups, which is why it's here over some others. Lightning Strike, just simple. It's just a good card. Katsu's been playing this card since the end of time, or since the beginning of time. So why not put it in the deck? You know, it's still a 2-card 7. It's very flexible if you need to go wide with it, and you can actually discard it. 1 Pummel. If you'll notice, the deck is 47 cards main board, which means you need to bring in 13. So a lot of the time, you will be bringing in one singular pummel because, hey, you can pummel Weakest, you can pummel CNC, you can pummel Blanche, you can pummel Surging Strike, and you can pummel Bonds of Ancestry. If your hand is like blue, Descendant, Bonds, pummel, you can throw Descendant, Bonds, throw the pummel, get like, the Dishonor won't be live, but you can still throw 0 for 4 after. So pummel has a lot of versatility in the deck, and it can get people. Again, it's a one of. If they think you're on it, they're going to overblock you, or they're going to play around it in a way to where you just make them waste cards. So 1 pummel is very nice, I think, for this type of list that's playing a bunch of really, really big attacks. The rest of the sideboard is pretty simple. 3 Sink Below because we're playing a lot of big attacks that can't really pitch since they're all red. So this is a little better than Flick Flack in a lot of situations for this deck because it lets us cycle. Which can also be pretty nice. If we have this, we have a big attack and we have like another red and we're on a turn where we want to throw the big attack. Hopefully we can find a yellow or a blue to be able to play it. 3 Mugenshi because a lot of decks are going to try to fatigue you. You're on Katsu. Mugenshi can also be sort of that bigger attack role. If you have a blue, you can swing double Kodachi into Mugenshi. It doesn't have the best effect since the other ones have hit effects or feel more like no one's going to really react to this, but people are going to react to an E-Strike for 7. So Mugenshi, you know, has its ups, has its downs. That's why all 3 are in the board. Matchups where you don't bring in the pummel, but you also want all of your disruption, you'll generally see 1 Mugenshi. Because those that like a deck like Zen or a deck like Phi, they won't block you. So they're not going to block the Mugenshi. Or if they do block the Mugenshi, it's super inefficient. So matchups that aren't going to block your Mugenshi, you really only need 1, and if you get it off, you're in a really good spot. So this is like that 1 flex spot if you don't bring in the pummel. And then simply 3 Snag for new. That's it. This deck's new matchup is really bad. So you just need it for new. Stops the reacts and their own attack actions from giving attack to their attack actions. In a decks like Azalea, you still might struggle because you can't snag into them, but you got Sink Below for that. Hopefully 1D react can help you, and also you have like CNC to disrupt them. You have the Weakest Link doesn't really help you there, but you can bring in pummel in that matchup too. So, of course your hard matchups are new. That's what the snag is for. There's not really any blues you need to cut. I guess you could say cut the 100 wins and maybe the Winds of Eternity, like the blue 100 wins, into new for the snags. Maybe the Lunging Press. You could go down like the Lunging Press, a Winds of Eternity, and like 1 Winds of Eternity, 1 Lunging Press, and the 1 blue 100 wins for the 3 snags. But you could also just go up 3 snag. I don't see that as a problem. You could just go up 3 snag and then bring in like CNC, Weakest Link, Blanchery Strike, or maybe even just all of them, because they might try to fatigue you as well. Since you're on like a more defensive plan, you could just bring in the whole board versus them. It probably wouldn't be too bad either. But as I said before, the whole idea of this deck is to be better into the decks that are trying to beat Zen. Because into Zen, Katsu into Zen is very weird because it's just like most other matchups where if Zen gets their fridge usable and online, it's pretty tough for you because then they can actually use it to block an on hit. But if they didn't, they have to make the conscious decision to try and block an on hit. If they, use their equipment early without effects, then maybe you have on a later turn, you can get another on hit through. Like, Zen needs to survive to get to the point where their armor becomes viable, but you have the hit effects to be able to threaten them off of that. You can sort of stop them from getting to that point where their armor is useful, and your hit effects can either make them block, which is really bad for them, or it can just force so much extra damage through where they'll have the block later. And into the decks that are really good into Zen, a deck like Victor can give Katsu a lot of problems. It can give Zen a lot of problems. The bigger attacks can sort of help with that, letting you just throw bigger things in without spending as many cards. Into matchups like New, you have the Snags. Into Azalea, you have just, again, into Azalea, good 2-card hands, to where if they actually disrupt you, maybe you can block a little bit and then send something back. And that's kind of just the whole goal of this Katsu list, is to be that like mid-rangey plan, not so much the hyper aggro that you see in a lot of ninjas. And maybe this all goes back to normal. Next set in Rosetta, maybe Katsu gets a really dang good new card that's probably just Bonds of Ancestry, but a Katsu spec. And maybe it all goes back to normal. Maybe we all go back to Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, Katsu, and Zen. I don't think he's going to get another card banned. If they do, I mean, to be honest, nothing other than, unless they like straight ban red bonds as well, there's nothing else they could ban for Zen that Katsu already plays. Like, if Art of War goes down, sure. If Art of War dies, you just like go up another 100 wins and another Winds of Eternity. And then into New, you actually just go down London Press 200 wins, right? Like, nothing now in the Zen deck will hurt Katsu if it gets banned. Because I think one of the problems they were having banning stuff for Zen was well, if we touch bonds, it'll hurt Katsu. But they just started to bite the bullet, do it. Katsu, to be honest, was still not playable in this format with bonds at max copies. So I think that was a fair decision. And now we get to play this monstrosity. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Next week, maybe KO? I have no idea. This weekend is the Realm Fest in New Jersey. I will maybe be there if you're going. Most likely Sunday. I'll probably play Blitz if I go, or do side events. I have no idea. But I'll have to see, because I still don't know if I'm playing CC on Saturday. Probably not. I'll have to see if I can get a ride or something. But I don't know. It's weird. Like, I'm gonna probably play KO. And you'll see next week why that's a little awkward. Because I have a story about KO, specifically about big events in New Jersey. But I can save that one for next week. But Katsu, has always been fun for me. Sucks that he's literally unplayable. Like, one of the worst heroes. Like, I never thought I'd see the day where Katsu would be one of the worst heroes in the format. But he's just so bad. Because every deck counters him now. It sucks. Even, KO was a deck that Katsu is pretty good against. And then they printed Savage Sash, and that's not true anymore. So you kind of can't play Katsu right now. And even next set, depending on what they do next set, Katsu has to do something. Like the aggro deck, the new lightning decks have to either the new lightning decks have to not be able to block, and the new earth decks also have to not be able to block. Like life gain is fine if they're gaining life, great. But embodiment of Earths are scary for Katsu because they can just like one card 6 your Surging Strike and then you lose. So we'll have to see next set. But until then, I think this is a pretty decent Katsu list. Like I said, I've actually had a lot of fun playing it. I think this list is pretty good too. Like, I don't think this list is bad. I think this list is really playable. Even with like the surge, the lunging press, and the pummel, and all these 6s, like it's a competent list. I don't think a lot of Katsu players are gonna try it, but I think they should because this list is pretty good. I haven't been able to play it a absolute ton because I didn't get to play Flesh and Blood last week because of Star Wars and Talishar. It's not bad. I'm glad we have Talishar, but I guess Talishar isn't Talishar's problem. Anyway, the end of this video is pretty long. No one watches to this point anyway. My analytics say people watch, 2 minutes and see the deck list and then click off the video. So maybe you got to this point and maybe you see me rant. And I'm sorry, I rant a lot. I'm sorry I do that, but I just do. I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. Next week is probably going to be KO or Blitz, because also Skirmish season is coming. Maybe we'll do Blitz. We're going to do a Blitz deck next week. I don't know if it's going to be Fi. I don't know if it's going to be Zen. I don't know if it's going to be Rhinar, Lavaya, something. It's going to be Blitz, most likely. So I'll see you guys next week. Goodbye.